Mediabyte Podcast Network.
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
I want to play a game.
Don't fall asleep.
Just been informed that zombies have entered the building.
You opened it. We came.
The unburied dead are coming back to life.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the requel to / it's season 2, whatever you want to call it. Thank you all for all the love you guys got and gave me for the first episode of Final Destination, the franchise kind of series that we're doing here. So we are going to be going through all the Final Destination films. If you didn't know that already, we're going to be doing Final Destination 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll be doing Bloodlines as well. So today we are going to be specifically discussing Final Destination 2, which I really enjoy. You'll hear that throughout this podcast episode. I hope you guys, probably try to watch these movies before we go through them if you haven't seen them, just because I don't want to spoil too much for you if you haven't seen it. And I'll try to keep things as spoiler-free as I can, but I can't do that for every single thing here. So, some mild spoilers ahead of time, and let's get into it. So, Final Destination 2 is the movie of the day. This film came out on January 31st, 2003. I was not alive yet. I would be born in little under 2 months from that moment. I was born March 12th of that year, so yeah. This had a budget of $26 million and had an overall box office of $90.9 million, which comes out to roughly about $64 million in profit, which is a very good profit number for any kind of sequel, to be honest with you. That's a $64 million profit for the film, which is bigger than most films nowadays have profits that only have a $26 million budget. They don't usually make that much money. But people don't really realize how quickly Final Destination 2 came out. It was about two years after the first Final Destination film. Totally worth it, though. So the first time that I actually saw a Final Destination film like this, the Final Destination 2, it would have been in kind of one of those times when you're just kind of binging through a franchise, and I probably was on my laptop or on my computer in my old bedroom watching these films, one to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other, without much of a desire or understanding of what I was getting myself into a little bit. I liked the film, and I like the film now. I think I like it better now because I saw some of the sequels since then, and I don't like a lot of the other sequels as much as I like Final Destination 2. I'll try to get some of my hot takes about this film later on, but for now, Final Destination 2, I saw it probably on my laptop again, probably in my old bedroom, and yeah, when you're just bursting through franchises and you're like, every movie tends to just be the same movie at a certain point because you watched 8 hours of the same franchise. Same things happens with me with Saw. In all the Saw films, I just end up thinking that Saw 1 is Saw 3 and Saw 3 is... Okay, let me rephrase. The only film, honestly, in that franchise that I know exactly what happens is Saw 1 and Jigsaw, and then I guess Spiral. It's like 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know what any of the differences are between them plot-wise, unless if you told me the first plot beat of the film, I'd probably know what happens in it. Otherwise, I would have no idea. Same thing happens with all these Final Destination films. I don't know if that's just because I was again, bursting through this franchise, and I don't know what happens at the end of Final Destination 2 compared to Final Destination 3. I know what happens in Final Destination 2, but I think parts of Final Destination 3 and 4 get kind of mixed together in my brain. 2 and 3 are the same film for me, and 4 and 5 are the same film for me, and they all get kind of stuck in the same place in my head. So kind of crazy. So if you have no idea what happens in Final Destination 2, or you're like me and you're like very confused about every plot beat that happens in these films, I'm going to give you kind of a short little idea about what happens in it, and then we can kind of talk about it more. So while waiting on an entrance ramp to US Route 23, they have a premonition. The main woman has a premonition of a deadly pileup caused by a logging truck. So basically, her car stalls and she leaves, preventing 8 people from entering Route 23. Evan Lewis, Nora Carpenter, Tim, her son, Kat Jennings, Rory Peters, Isabella Hudson, Eugene, and Thomas Burke. So then the pileup occurs, a car crash crashes into Kimberly's car, kills Shayna, Dano, and Frankie. So basically what happens is, because Kimberly freaks the heck out and, doesn't end up really leaving, does not get on the highway, because who would get on the highway after that? After, seeing everyone die that you love and care about. She saves the lives of over 8 people, I believe, and yes, 8 people, and they are now on death's hit list, which is, fun, good for them, congrats. Maybe they, oops, that's not a good thing, because they gonna die, that's just what happens. But basically, so they all return home, and Kimberly doesn't really, because as is per usual for these films, Kimberly does not have any clue what's going on when it comes to the whole death's hit list thing, which I like in Final Destination, the new one, Bloodline. They kind of jumped through that a little bit really quickly, which I liked, because it's something I find kind of boring and repetitive about these films, especially in the 3rd and 4th. But we'll figure that out in a minute here, and then we'll talk about the 5th one, the remake, and how that works and all that stuff. Remake, what are you gonna call it? I won't tell you if you haven't seen it yet, but we'll talk about the 5th one later. So Evan is a lottery winner. He attempts to, jump away from a fire in his apartment, but it unfortunately ends up killing him. So basically, that was something I talked about in one of my videos that are coming out soon. Probably by the time you get this, it probably won't be out yet. But I talked about his death a little bit. He dies in one of the most insane ways that I have seen in a film in a very, very long time. So he is impaled by a fire escape ladder after escaping a fire that he started in his apartment. So he starts it by accident, completely by accident, or death starts it if you want to blame death as a serial killer type character. He gets impaled completely by a fire escape ladder that drops on him as he falls out of his apartment and it stabs him through the eye. The whole scene lasts like 5-6 minutes, but it feels like it lasts 10 and a half minutes, because it's one of the strongest visuals in the film. I would argue it's one of the biggest moments. But then I have another kill in the film that is also one of the most insane and weirdly funny, almost, because of its suddenness. But that is one of the crazy kills. So the son of Nora, I believe is her name, Tim, there's this whole long scene about gas, he's going to visit the dentist, and there's a whole long scene about gas and all that stuff, nitrous, I think that's what it is, and it's pretty crazy. There's some of the craziest visuals in this film, a bird keeps smacking on the door, on the window pane, straight up Finding Nemo. It is literally straight up like Finding Nemo. The pelican thing keeps banging into the dentist window, and I was like, that is 100% Finding Nemo. I don't know if Finding Nemo came out before or after this film, but it is Finding Nemo to a T, because it's very, very funny, because it's exactly like Finding Nemo. I think, and it's even funnier talking about Finding Nemo, because later on in that same kind of little death scene, which he doesn't end up dying in that second. But there's a little hint at what happens there. It's really funny. There's these little like fish things that are hanging above his dentist chair, and it ends up falling and it falls in his mouth, so he can't breathe out of his mouth because it's like the nitrous thing, and it's like death is trying to get him that way. And it's the pufferfish from Finding Nemo, not like the Finding Nemo pufferfish, but a pufferfish that is also in Finding Nemo. And that's just something I'm now clicking in my head, and that's pretty crazy that is already in the film. I don't really understand why they did that. It's really funny because I think it's really funny if let me actually see. Did Finding Nemo, I think was the same year. That is so funny. Yeah, Finding Nemo was 2003, the same year. But Finding Nemo came out about 5 months after, which is actually really, 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 really funny. So Finding Nemo came out about 5 months after this, but shares so much weird plot stuff between this and that death, which is really, really funny. So I guess think about that next time you watch this film. Think about Finding Nemo and all the similarities to the dentist scene in that film. I don't know, that's pretty crazy. But basically, he does not die. The dentist comes out and saves his life, which you could argue, which is actually kind of an interesting little plot hole. You could argue that the dentist saved his life, so therefore he shouldn't be on death's hit list, because the dentist did save him from dying. Wow, I'm just now putting that together. That's really weird. I don't know if that counts. Does that count? Should he have been taken off death's hit list? I'm going to throw this over to Alex, because Alex is in the room with me right now as I'm recording this. Alex, I know they can't hear you, but what do you think? So the dentist saves Tim's life, the little boy from Final Destination 2, in the dentist chair. Do you remember?
Kinda. He saves his life.
Remember that the oxygen comes through?
Yeah.
He comes in and saves his life before he dies. So should Tim be off death's hit list? True. Did his heart stop? His heart didn't stop.
No, then he's not off the list.
Interesting. Okay.
Heart has to stop.
So their heart has to
You have
stop.
to die and come back.
So you have to die and come back. Okay. So all right. So I remember that from Bloodlines, because Bloodlines explains that. You're right. So you don't. Okay. So that is a fixed plot hole because my brain was overthinking that a little bit, I think. Okay, so that's not really that important, but it's just kind of a crazy little coincidence. But basically, he gets saved. He leaves. It's like, oh my gosh, that was so bad. That could have been so bad, right? They walk outside. Kimberly is like running around going, we gotta go get Tim, because he's next. Tim is next. The little boy's next. And Tim is walking through this kind of courtyard, and above them, they see a window pane being put in to the building, and basically the kind of ladder thing that's holding up the people who are putting up the window pane in the high part business building falls and completely crushes Tim very suddenly. And it does not sound very funny, but if you're watching it, it is so over like, it's so sudden and so dramatic and crazy, and it's one of those things that is just a major surprise for no reason other than the fact that how did this happen, why did this happen, and how does this, we're so used to death in these films being like very meticulously planned out and so like careful, especially, so like think about this for a second, okay? Think about the deaths that happen in Final Destination 1, right? Think about the guy who gets, like, weirdly roped in the bathtub and falls over and, like, chokes himself by accident, right? The water that made him slip quite literally, like, takes itself, it rescinds itself, which is so weird, right? But this, a window pane falls down and smashes the guy, and that's it. It's just one of the most insane things I have seen in one of these movies up to this point. I mean, it's crazier than the plane exploding. It's crazier than the ending of the first Final Destination, which I don't like that much. But, you know, there's a whole podcast dedicated to just the first one, so you can go watch that if you want. But let's look at, for a minute, the very, 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 very interesting, very insane kill. It's one of the kills that, you don't think about very often because it's one of those things. It's kind of little hard to look at. Basically, chain reaction happens. The doors of an elevator that is in this apartment building where they're all kind of staying at in one spot. All the survivors of the highway, what would have happened on the highway, are all in one place together. Nora leaves because guy's going crazy a little bit inside. Eugene tries to get Burke's gun, and it misfires repeatedly, which would not happen, and it's because death doesn't take suicide as a way out. Nora leaves, like, oh my gosh, I have to get out of here. I'm not going to live my last days here with these people. And they go out, and the elevator ends up accidentally, the death makes the elevator decapitate her, which is one of the most crazy things. Yeah, I don't know, it's crazy. I'm remembering now that Eugene, the whole misfire thing happens after Nora is decapitated, but basically she still leaves because the people are going crazy. But it's a little too much almost. It's a little like a kill in Bloodlines, if you've seen it. Bloodlines is a little bit like that, where there's a kill and it's a little graphic, and you won't think about it, too much. You'll try not to think about that one more than you'll try to think about the other kills and other deaths that happen in the film, because it's a little much. But basically, so the whole major plot line that happens is that a new life can defeat death, and Isabella is pregnant. That's the whole idea, right? Isabella's pregnant, she can give birth to a baby, and that baby will, be the reason why death stops, right? Well, no, because you find out that Isabella was never actually supposed to die at Route 23. So, boom. Yeah, I don't know. So, basically, that's kind of a disappointing ending. It sucks a little bit. You're like, oh my gosh, this whole plotline is completely worthless. And then an oxygen leak explodes and kills Eugene and Clear. And then, like Alex said earlier, your heart has to die and be revived, and that's the only way you can really do it. So Kimberly tries to kill herself and be revived. She drives an ambulance into a lake and then is revived by the doctor. So that's kind of the main plot, but that's not the very end, because the very end, it's always got to happen this way in all these Final Destination films. You have to have a dramatic little ending at the very end, and it's interesting. I like the way some of these films end. I think it's almost cliche now at this point that the main characters have to die. I think it'd be more interesting now, honestly, in the next film, if the characters were left a little bit more open-ended at their fates, because now we kind of know that they all die every single time, which is fine, I guess, but it leaves a little bit wanting more on the connection side of the way these films are. I sometimes find myself hoping and wishing that these films would end up wrapping up a story, not 100%, so we can kind of continue on with a plot line or a plot beat or a character or something from the previous film. But I think that might be asking too much a little bit, because I think part of the reason why people like these movies so much is the kind of individuality of all the films. So here is the ending for Final Destination 2. Kimberly and Burke are having a picnic with people and somebody, and Kimberly's dad is there too. They explain, so there's a farm accident. I didn't really talk about it. It's like another death that happens, but so the Gibbons is the people who are with them, explained that their son Brian was nearly hit by the news van on the same day of the farm accident, but Rory saved him. As Kimberly and Burke realize the implications of this, Brian is killed in an explosion caused by a malfunctioning barbecue grill. So Brian is another character. Their son, the Gibbons' son, is named Brian. You figure out who he is throughout the film. He's almost hit. He's saved. Rory saves him. Boom. Rory's dead. And a barbecue explosion. And that's kind of the way the film And so, it's fine. It's an okay ending, but it leaves a lot to be explored, a lot of want, and I think it's fine. I think it's okay, but I think there's a lot. It leaves a little bit of wanting more, because sometimes I think these films just end in kind of like, oh my gosh, that's not how this really happened. There's this other extra little thing. Boom, now he's dead, and that's the end of the film. And I kind of always want more. Sometimes I want the characters to have an okay ending rather than just everyone blows up or everyone dies or whatever else happens. So it's interesting. It's good. Watch it. It's definitely worth watching if you've never seen it before. Really, honestly, all of them are worth watching at least one time. I wouldn't say that any of the Final Destination films aren't worth watching at least once. Because you might like the ones that I don't like, and you might end up liking ones, not liking ones that I like, and things like that. So, if you like the films, watch them. Like if you like the first one, watch all of them, and then let me know what you think of the other 4, and then Bloodlines. But watch Bloodlines. Okay, do not watch Bloodlines unless you've watched at least like 2 or 3 of the first films. I know most of you who have wanted to watch it would watch it by now, but make sure you don't watch them before you watch Bloodlines, because there's a lot of things in Bloodlines that get kind of bulldozed over a little bit with plots, and kind of like they expect you to know how death works, good or bad, whatever that might be. They expect you to kind of know the way that death works a little bit. There's a little mild explanation, but it is not as good as, it's not as clear of an explanation as other films are. And yeah, so, here on Slash It, we do our ratings out of 7. We'll do a little recap of the way that this works. So, 1, 2, 3 is leaning to the bad side. 1, I wouldn't recommend it at all. I hate this film. 3, it's not great, but it's okay. 4 is smack dab in the middle. 5, 6, and 7, I would recommend it and watch it. And, 7's great. 6 is good. 5 is okay. 4 is back dab in the middle, back and forth. So that's kind of the way I do it. It just makes it easier to kind of get a little bit of a broader scale. And I'm mostly positive, and so I like having more kind of range of positives to have. 4, 5, 6, 7, because it makes it a little bit better, a little easier to have more variety in my reviews, my ratings on these films. So if I had to put a number on the place where I'd put this, which is where a lot of the Final Destination films actually end up kind of being, in my opinion, I'd probably put this one between 5 and 6. So like 5, 5.5, 6, somewhere in there. It's not incredible by any means. It's not my favorite horror movie by any means. But if you're looking for a movie where people die that is fun and not like sad, and you can enjoy it, and you can have fun watching it, this movie works, and it succeeds that perfectly. And it's honestly one of the best films to do that with. Any of the Final Destination films are. They're classic horror movies. They don't have... It's classic horror movies. There's not a lot of sudden, it's a very turn your brain off movie, and I think you can enjoy that if you are interested in that at all. That kind of movie interests you, watch all of these movies, especially the first one and this one as well. But one thing I wanted to mention, I didn't really bring it up before here, but this is kind of the point where the only real person who ever kind of jumps between film to film is in this one. Clear is in Final Destination, the first one. She's like in a mental facility in this one, not because she went crazy or anything, but because she's trying to protect herself from death, which is crazy and very random. In this film, you also find out that Alex Browning, the main character from the first one, was killed by a flying brick and dies off screen, which again is pretty depressing and sad, and I don't really know why they had to do it that way, but they did, and that's, I guess, their own prerogative. So thank you all for listening to this, watching this, and everything. I really do deeply appreciate you guys who click on these things and watch them, listen to them, because This is one of my favorite things I do on a daily basis, pretty much. I hope you guys enjoy all these things. Make sure you watch these with the videos. I do so all these videos, all these podcasts will be both in video form, not with my face, but in pictures and stuff. On our YouTube channel, you can find these podcasts anywhere you go. They're on every podcast app, and if they're not on one of those podcast apps, tell me, because they need to be on that podcast app. And if you have any suggestions for how to make these podcasts better, please let me know, because I'd appreciate that. It's Mediabyte Podcast. Let me actually make sure the email is correct here, because I have a business. It's mediabytebusiness@gmail.com. You can go click that, and all kinds of crazy information will be there. And you can let me know what you think, what you have any questions or anything like that about my favorite films or stuff like that. Maybe eventually I will get a specific email address that you guys can send emails to, and we can kind of have a little segment where we talk about all kinds of crazy questions, horror movie questions, or whatever else that you might have. And I would appreciate that. So, thank you all for listening, watching, everywhere you go. If you like all these podcasts, go listen to all the other podcasts, the Mediabyte Podcast Network, Exploring Cinema, the Mediabyte Podcast, and other podcasts that we do have coming up. Diary of a Indie Filmmaker is on there as well, which that is a good podcast. I do that myself alone in my car for 5 minutes. Talk about all the short films, all the writing, all the more artistic, issues that I run into sometimes about making films, making paintings, writing, all that kind of fun stuff, that side of things. So if that's interesting to you, go check that out. And yeah, so Mediabyte Company, Mediabyte Co. Mediabyte Co. is TikTok, Mediabyte Company is Instagram. You can follow all my stuff, Jared Poyner, JaredPoynerr on Instagram. I post all kinds of crazy stuff there. You can see my face. You can see what I'm up to on a daily basis. And yeah, so Patreon is commentaries on all kinds of films. We're going to have a lot more coming up there soon. Right now we have an Office Space commentary out that we did a little while ago with Evan, my brother. And then soon more commentaries will be out. Probably just me talking into a microphone, talking over the films, kind of similar to this. So if you want an hour and a half long podcast about a movie while you watch the movie, that's for you. So thank you all for listening, watching, all that stuff. And yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Like we say here, we say this every time on every podcast. We've said it on every video that I did on the Flash It. Treat every day like it's Halloween.
Mediabyte Podcast Network.